Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. I am jumping on really quick. I haven't got much time because I'm actually racing out the door, but I wanted to record this episode for you. I think it's an important one, and I think it's really important that we discuss this and we keep the conversation going. So, I want to discuss estrogen metabolites. Should we care about estrogen metabolites? So, if you don't know what estrogen metabolites are, basically they are byproducts of estrogen. So, when the body metabolizes estrogen, it breaks down into these byproducts. We've got 2-OH-E1, we've got 4-OH-E1, we've got 16-OH-E1. These are the metabolites of estrogen, the byproducts of estrogen. And then we've got 2-methoxy, which occurs via methylation in phase 2 of the liver. This is where these metabolites are created in the liver. We have phase 1, we have phase 2 in the liver. Phase 1 breakdown of estrogen and phase 2 breakdown of estrogen, and it happens in the liver. And we have these genes, which are enzymes, and they actually help to metabolize our estrogen. So if you go and get your genetic panel done, you'll be able to see if you have any SNPs, a layman term would be mutations in any of these particular phase 1 or phase 2 liver enzymes that break down your estrogen. We have a lot of different estrogens in the body. The main ones are E1, E2, and E3. And so you can do testing and you can see how your E1, E2, E3 are breaking down in the liver via phase 1 and phase 2 in the liver. And then we can see in phase 1 how much of all these metabolites you have. And there is some data, and I don't believe that the data is absolutely concrete here. I believe there are still some question marks, and I believe that the research needs to be better. I don't believe the research is actually that great on the metabolites. Don't quote me on this. I have not myself dived into all of this, but just from what I've learned and discussions with mentors, the actual evidence around these metabolites, it's not black and white. And I think that in this online health space, oftentimes it can sound like the research is concrete, it is black and white. And that's just not the way science goes. Anyway, but especially because we have some very expensive hormone tests out there that market really well and that a lot of practitioners use. And so it sounds often like this is set in stone. These metabolites absolutely definitively are important for us to look at, and they will impact your risk of cancer, right? And that is something that we think about with these metabolites. And I've spoken about as well back in the day is, we want to make sure our estrogen is metabolizing properly to reduce our risk of cancer, because what can happen is these metabolites, in particular 4-OHE1, can go on to cause these things called form these things called quinones that can bind to and damage DNA. So I've always said, and I stand by this, and I've never said otherwise, that we want to make sure our estrogen is metabolizing properly. That's vitally important. And regardless of whether the science is settled or not, we should be supporting our liver and our detox pathways, including these specific enzymes, which are genes that help with the breakdown of our estrogen into various metabolites. And the same goes for our gut, because we also break down our estrogen in our gut. And we have to make sure that we have low levels of something called beta-glucuronidase, which is an enzyme. And high levels of beta-glucuronidase will negatively impact our ability to get rid of our used up old estrogen and other things too, other toxins as well. So we don't want high beta-glucuronidase going on in our gut, because that's going to have a negative effect on our ability to detox in general, including our estrogen. So I have always said, and I stand by, we need to support our liver. We need to support our gut health in order to support healthy estrogen metabolism. But should we test these estrogen metabolites? Listen, the answer is maybe. And if you want to and you've got the money, go for it, right? But I think that we have to think about, what are we going to do differently if we do go ahead and test these things? So, if you're running a Dutch hormone test, they can be extremely expensive. Functional medicine is expensive as it is. So I'm always trying to think critically for my clients and not waste their money, right? So that you can do these metabolites separately. It's still a couple of $100, but you can do that by all means. If you are data driven, I'm data driven. If I see things in black and white, I tend to go, oh, okay, Tara, you need to get more serious about your diet and lifestyle strategies. And this is the thing. when we boil it all down, if we get the data and we see how your estrogen is metabolizing, what are you going to do that we, or I personally as a practitioner, would not tell you to do anyway? Nothing. Because here are the things that support those genes, those enzymes in the liver that break your estrogen down healthfully and help to excrete it. And same for the beta glucuronidase in your gut. Here are the things I suggest every woman do and think about daily, right? I suggest every woman look at their gut health in detail. I believe every woman should be doing at least a yearly gut test and doing a stool test. I personally like to see metabolites on the stool tests I use. I like to see the full microbiome picture. Some stool tests, especially some very popular ones, don't show these things. So I think a particular type of stool testing per year is mandatory if you care about your health, period, end of story. Doesn't matter what you're trying to do, whether it be estrogen metabolism or brain fog. You need to look at your gut. I have said that for years and I'll continue to say it until, such time as maybe we do things differently. So to support your estrogen metabolites, you work on your gut. Check. I do this with every client anyway. I promote this anyway. Okay, so we got that sorted. I also believe we should be eating a really good quality diet with tons of fruits and vegetables and supporting our blood sugar and making sure that we're eating crucifers, right? Cruciferous vegetables. We all know how important they are, and dark leafy greens and berries. But that should be done on a daily basis. That's what I teach all my clients anyway, because these things will support those detox pathways, in particular cruciferous vegetables, getting enough sulfur in the diet. These are healthy dietary strategies that any practitioner should be educating their clients on, regardless of what an estrogen metabolite test says. So check, we're eating a healthy diet. We're consuming flaxseed every single day. We're having cruciferous vegetables and or dark leafy greens every single day and berries every single day. Check, we've got that sorted, right? What else do we do? The gut health, by the way, the reason why that's so important is because what happens in the gut gets detoxed out through the liver. You can't talk about liver pathways, estrogen metabolites, supporting liver pathways and estrogen metabolite pathways if you're not working on the gut, because the gut puts such pressure on the liver if it is dysbiotic, if we do have pathogens and issues going on. So that's why gut work is so important. Nutrient work, I talk about this ad nauseum, right? Everything boils down to your nutrition, and the diet you eat is not enough. You need to be doing blood testing combined with HTMA testing. And so we can actually see what's going on with your minerals, your vitamins, your amino acids, and plug up those holes and those deficiencies and those imbalances, because everybody has them. And we should be doing that on a regular basis. I believe everyone should do an HTMA minimum once a year, preferably at least twice a year, and get the customized supplement protocol for you based on the testing and the data we have to show where the holes are for you. Because, these estrogen metabolites, the genetics that are at play have a lot to do with the liver genetics and the methylation genetics. So and what makes these genes work optimally? It's nutrients, right? So what are you going to do differently? Because the metabolite tests don't tell you what nutrients you're deficient in, right? They don't give you that information. So just go to the source, get the information from other testing and work on the nutrients, because that's going to support the liver pathways, the estrogen metabolites. And I mean, we could jump down even more rabbit holes. If we're going to test estrogen metabolites, why aren't we testing everyone's genes? So now we're going to be testing everyone's genetics, and sure, we can do that. And I have a lot of experience with that. And I can look at your genes. And, just because you've got a genetic SNP doesn't mean that enzyme is working poorly or optimally, for that matter. We have no way of knowing that. That really comes down to doing all the things, eating the diet, drinking the filtered water, doing the gut work, supporting the nutrients, right? All the things I just spoke about, right? Lifestyle stuff, getting enough sleep, reducing your stress. These impact your genes, which impact your estrogen metabolites. There is nothing you will do differently when you work with me anyway, because I'm going to walk you through all this stuff. I'm going to talk to you about your environmental toxins. They put pressure on these metabolite pathways, right? I'm going to talk to you about eliminating alcohol. I'm going to talk to you about detoxification strategies, right? All of these things, reducing plastics. But these things should be done completely regardless of what your estrogen metabolites are doing. Apparently, these metabolites can fluctuate quite a bit too. I'm not too sure about that. Again, I haven't really looked into it. And then finally, what a lot of people might say as well, if my metabolites are no good, I can take DIM or I can take calcium D-glucarate. So let me touch on that real quick. DIM is a Band-Aid. Calcium D-glucarate is a Band-Aid. right? If you aren't metabolizing properly, DIM is not the long-term solution. The long-term solution is not quick, is not easy. It is everything I just said. Those are the things we have to think about every single day, right? And we might need to do deep gut work for a few months and nutrient work, nutrient repletion for a few months, right? So DIM is a band-aid, and I have seen DIM clinically cause low estrogen symptoms in more than one client, more than a couple of clients. So I personally don't love DIM at this stage. We'll see, maybe in the future I do, but at this point, just eat the cruciferous vegetables. And if you can't, that means you have a gut issue and we can work on that, or a molybdenum issue. But just eat the crucifers, right? Don't mask things, take a Band-Aid supplement like DIM. I don't think that is the best or long-term solution. And I've seen it, like I say, cause symptoms in some women. And then the beta-glucuronidase, people say that you can take calcium D-glucarate to lower beta-glucuronidase. Beta-glucuronidase, if high, is simply a product of a dysbiotic gut. So you go back to the gut. Don't waste your money on calcium D-glucarate, which, by the way, I believe you need really high levels of, which we don't typically get in supplement form to even make a dent. But again, it's lazy thinking. As humans, we can be so lazy. Instead of going, let's eat the crucifers every day, work on diet, work on lifestyle, work on gut, work on nutrients, focus there. We just go, let's just take a pill. Let's just take a pill. We'll just take some DIM. We'll just take some calcium D-glucarate. Very lazy and not functional medicine. That is not a root cause approach. That is a pill for your ill approach, which is what we're trying to really think more critically than just taking a pill for our ill, because that's really what allopathic medicine does. So I don't believe in those two supplements. I don't believe they're going to make much of a dent, especially if you're not doing the other things. And if you are doing the other things, which you have to be doing, you may not have a need for those supplements. That might be complete waste of your money. And I don't think that's the right mindset. I think it can get us into a very dangerous, lazy, pill for your ill approach mindset. So yeah, I'm failed to see the rationale behind, if you want to do the test, that's fine, right? I'll probably do the estrogen metabolite testing just because I do everything, even things I don't need to test, I test. But again, I'm not going to take DIM or calcium D-glucarate. Where my time and energy focuses in on, it's my gut health, on my nutrients. I do constant gut testing, constant HTMA work, lifestyle. I don't drink alcohol, hardly any at all. I try to tick off, okay, am I getting my crucifers? Am I getting my 2 tablespoons of flax seeds in every day, right? That's what I would encourage you to do. So don't get freaked out by all the chitter chatter online. I think there's so much, people are trying to market to you. And when they try to market to you, sometimes it can get a little bit overwhelming and discombobulating, and you think you need something. But when we stop and think critically about, is something really necessary, or is it going to be a waste of money? And it's up to you. If you have the money to spend on those tests, go for it. If you're data driven and that's what's going to be the impetus to make you put down the alcohol and eat your crucifers, go for it. But I do want to always bring you the truth. That is my goal. I always will come from a place of wholesome intent, and I'm going to try my utmost best to always bring you the truth, to allow you to make decisions accordingly for your health and your budget at the end of the day, but for your health that are actually going to move the needle. And DIM and calcium D-glucarate are not it. So I hope you found this episode interesting. Share it out. As always, make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so you don't miss anything. Share this with all the women in your life who are talking about hormones and estrogen and maybe dry urine testing and things like this, okay? So share it out. I hope you found it interesting, and we'll speak again soon. Bye for now. I am not a medical professional, and the information provided in this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. I do not have access to your individual medical history or circumstances, so the content discussed here should not be considered as medical advice. Before making any changes to your diet, lifestyle, or considering the use of supplements, please consult with a qualified healthcare professional or your doctor to ensure it's safe and appropriate for your specific situation. Any decisions you make based on the content of this podcast are at your own discretion and risk. Thank you for tuning in.